Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is your host, Nicholas Zart, and you're listening to the second episode of the Lighter Side of Psychosis, a Taptosaurus production. So if you haven't heard the very first episode where I introduced the concept of the lighter side of psychosis, it's very simple. This is all about those weird and odd situations you can find yourself in, unbeknownst to you, certainly because you didn't try to, but all of a sudden things become just strange. And of course, it's always about other people, right? It's you find yourself in a situation where other people don't react the way you thought they would react. Now, of course, you have to be mature about it, right? I mean, you have your part of the responsibility in the whole situation. In other words, I know that when a strange situation arises around me, the fact that I'm simply aware of it, the fact that I'm simply reacting to it means that there is something I need to understand from it. There's something I haven't resolved inside of me that makes me react to this. Simply put, if I was completely okay, I worked out all of my crap, all of my stuff inside, I wouldn't react to anything out there. It would just be like Teflon. I'd have a Teflon skin. But I don't. And I'm sure many of you don't either, and that's why we're here, and that's why we interact with each other, and that's why, well, we're still here on Earth and not way up there doing something else. So the lighter side of psychosis is really a bunch of stories where I also invite you to submit your stories. We can also do interviews. That would be fun. Where we talk about, sometimes you do things and you communicate, you talk, you do, and it comes from a good heart, but sometimes it doesn't land the way you want it to. And so my next story this time around is about neighbors, right? So neighbors is a bag of mixed feelings. Neighbors are important. I mean, everybody more or less has neighbors. I mean, even if you live way out there in Montana and your next neighbor is a few miles away, you still have neighbors. And to a certain extent, you need those neighbors. Unfortunately, right here in the southern parts of California, we are on top of each other. So our relationships with our neighbors are not going to be the same as they would be in another state where you're separated for miles and miles. We live in close quarters. And when people live in close quarters, or even animals for that matter of fact, things happen, dynamics change, people get angry, and you've got a lot of other feelings you have to take into consideration. Put it in another way, it's not really that natural to live that close to each other. So, of course, some people do their best to avoid neighbors, and I wasn't like that. If you've heard the very first episode, which talked about my first real kind of office experience, I'm an office dynamic virgin. I didn't understand why people thought it was so hard to work in an office and to work with people. But one thing I've always loved was, people, because I love working with people. Except I've been very fortunate up until now. I've always chosen the people I wanted to work with. And best yet, I was never stuck with them from a 9-to-5 kind of scenario, day in, day after. So my impression of working with people has always been pretty good because it's been fun. Of course, you've got people you don't like and people you can't really work with, and that's fine, that's totally understandable. But I never understood why people would tell me, it's so hard to work is so difficult, people are so difficult. I never understood it because I never had that experience. Now, one experience I've had that everybody has had is that, we have neighbors and we interact with neighbors, okay? So this is a story about a neighbor. And of course, as usual, we won't name names. We won't say where and how and all that good stuff. But these neighbors actually moved in a few years ago, and very sweet people, very nice. I mean, she's just a wonderful, loving person, very heart-centered, and all of that good stuff. Well, he is a different story. He's in his 70s, somebody who went through the 60s, sort of the 68 revolution, still refers to police officers as pigs and things like that. Just you're very typical kind of guy who is, just a bit of a revolutionary. But he's also getting older. So you think at that stage, when you're in your 70s, you start to have to not make amends, but start to understand and start to be very balanced in your life. Or, in other words, you have to start becoming a little bit more wise, right? And I've always liked him. He's very entertaining. He's very outspoken about his political views, which, always kind of make me laugh because I always hear him saying, well, you have to vote. And I'm like, why? Well, because if you don't, nothing's going to happen. And so I asked him, I said, well, what has been happening? Do you think things are any better now than they were 30 years ago? Well, no. And I said, okay, well, so what are you going to do? Well, let's vote for the lesser of evils. Okay, so we've been doing that for the last 30 years. Anything good happening? Because I certainly don't see it. So, of course, at that point, these kind of people will always start to withdraw and show you specific examples out of context. And which is fine, and you're right. Hitler did some great things. The Volkswagen Beetle is a great thing, but overall, it wasn't a good thing at all. So they kind of lose that perspective. They go into defense mode, and they start to defend themselves. So that was my interaction with this person, and it was fascinating. An artist too, somebody who's well versed in the arts, and somebody who's very passionate. But one thing that he's always shown himself to be is very stubborn and very passionate about his points of view, to the point where I would be included on emails about things that either I already knew very much of, or little hints and jabs about our lifestyle not being the greatest, vegetarians and vegans, this is why it's bad for you kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, it's true. Any kind of extremes are not good, okay? But we're kind of beyond that. So this is what I thought I had, that kind of relationship with him. Certainly I have that kind of relationship with her. And so they're nice folks, as I said before. And once in a while, they would ask favors of us, and we would ask favors of them. And that's always been working very fine. In other words, they would, water the plants when we're not here. We would water their plants when they're not there. Now, we have a pretty long driveway. And one of the things that they had asked in the past was to use the driveway to repair their cars. So neither one of us ever liked that at all. But, we're trying to be good neighbors. So we said, all right. And we said, all right, twice, which, was fine. But it was never intended as a permanent solution. First of all, the owner does not want us to repair cars on the driveway. Second of all, it's in front of our windows. I'm not really feeling comfortable with somebody walking in around because, well, who knows? I might be walking naked in the house. I won't tell you if I am or not. But having said this, and also just having somebody, going through the yard, opening the gate, sometimes even leaving it open, it was kind of uncomfortable. But nevertheless, we wanted to be good neighbors, so we said, yeah, sure, do it. Once was fine. Twice was fine. But then we started hearing it more and more and more and making it more of a demand than asking. And this is probably they weren't aware of that. Now, in the meantime, of course, they have to go through the side of the door in order to get to their place. And there's a metallic gate that is hooked to the side of the house, which when it closes, it slams and it makes a lot of noise. Now, of course, I record from home these days, so, you might be recording for a half hour and all of a sudden, clank, you hear that horrible noise. Or you might be on the phone with a potential client or with somebody important and you hear that clunk. It doesn't sound good, it stresses me out, and it's just not something I feel like we need to do. Now, when it comes to us, we're very careful. We try to close doors lightly and do all that good stuff and everything. So that was a bit of an issue, but we got it resolved. I asked very nicely, can you walk the gate, so on and so forth. And I didn't see the red flags at the time because what I got back was, well, it's because this, and that. Well, fine, I understand that, but please, can you do something about it? That's all I'm asking. I don't care about the excuses because I understand. I totally get it. But that's not my problem. Can you do it? Yes or no? If you can't do it, I'll figure it out. I'll find a solution. So they did find a solution, and it worked pretty well. And one day, of course, the gate was slammed, and it was him. So I sent him an email. I said, can you please, do something about that? And I forgot to thank him for having done a good job before. It was my fault. I should have done it, but I didn't think it was such a big deal. Well, that got a first series of weirdness going. He got his wife involved, and he got my wife involved too. And my wife was like, what happened? I don't want to have any problems with neighbors. And I said, no, me neither. What's going on? So she said that, he reached out to her, she reached out to him, and now she's reaching out to me, which was just really bizarre. So that was the first red flag, and I should have put the pieces together. And oh my gosh, why am I so naive still at 50 plus years old? Really? Or I should say 50 plus years young in my case. So that was the first thing. And then one day, I'm recording another a radio show I have on KLBP, and I get a flurry of text messages from her. Now, they just got back from holiday, so they're a little bit stressed out of being back here. They're street sweeping, so, you have to change the cars and move them around and all that good stuff. On top of it, they were redoing the sidewalk, which somehow threw them into a frenzy. So the flurry of text, which I couldn't answer because obviously I was recording, was, can we use your driveway? Oh my gosh, the sidewalks are being redone. This is crazy. This is insane. And I'm thinking, why are you working up into a fizzy here? I mean, this is really not that much of a big deal. You've got a car, you just park it on the other side, and boom, done deal, end of discussion. What is the big deal? But anyway, I didn't feel like answering it because I was doing something, I just didn't have the time. Plus, that evening, I was expecting people to come over. We're supposed to have a meeting here, so I needed the driveway. I didn't think about it. Well, I come home, and the car is parked in the driveway. And I'm thinking, well, that's peculiar. Why would you park on the driveway without waiting for me to say yes or no? So this is where, you're always confronted with a choice in life, right? There's the right way of doing things, and there's the wrong way of doing things. Unfortunately, you don't always know, and you don't always have all the data available to make the right decisions. So you do the best you can. And so what I did was I texted her and I said, hey, it's really not cool to park on our driveway until you've heard from us, whether it's okay or not. And so I sent him an email because he doesn't have a cell phone. And I said, yeah, it's really not cool to park on our driveway without our consent. And so, and a few other things. I was just trying to be diplomatic, okay? But the word consent threw him off the handle. He went ballistic on me. So now here I have this, fairly nice neighbor who is well in his, he's probably mid-70s, early 70s actually, who is going ballistic on me, quoting in his reply the word consent, jabbing me, accusing me of being antisocial, of really lacking in social capacities, which is funny because he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't go out. He doesn't do anything. He just listens to these political shows all day long, and that's the extent of his social skills. But he's, telling me I'm not social and everything. So I'm just like, and the email was really pretty harsh, basically. So I reply and I said, oh, I'm sorry. You're really taking it the wrong way. I didn't mean it like that. And I try to go quickly through the email, not spending too much time because I'm doing something else, right? But it sends back another flurry of emails. Now, what also happened in the meantime was that my meeting was canceled, thank goodness. So nobody needed to come over here and park in the driveway. And my car was parked there. So I was on the phone with all of these people. And at some point, I needed to get out and go and get my wife and bring her back home. So I was on the phone, and they knocked on the door. Well, I didn't go and answer because I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone with people. I couldn't just do anything. And that threw him into another fizzy. So then he was saying, you are not even courageous enough to go mano to mano or mano a mano and talk to me face to face. And I'm replying back again saying, oh, seriously, hey, I'm on the phone. I can't talk. We'll talk later. Right now, I've got way too much on my plate to handle this. I'm just saying it's not cool to park on the driveway without hearing if it's okay or not. If you don't like the word consent, I'll use okay or not. And that was it. In the back of my mind, I thought, okay, well, that's pretty straightforward. He should get it, right? Nope, not at all. Because now I'm getting a third round. And I know it sounds like I'm just complaining and victimized and all that good stuff. But I was more, what's the word? I was more struck by the absurdity of the situation, the Kafkaesque situation that was unfolding in front of me, and which I felt no control over. And of course, I'm thinking in the meantime, wow, I'm attracting some weird juju here. I got to start looking into this stuff pronto. So now I'm getting a third email, and it's really attacking me. Now it's going straight at it. I'm also I'm actually a professionally trained and educated business and life coach. So I went to school with that. I paid money. I've got my certificate, even international recognitions, and so on and so forth. Now he's attacking me, and he's saying, if I didn't think these careers were such a scam, I would say you need to go see a professional coach, quote unquote. So he just, sending me little jabs like that. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. And again, I reply and I say, look, you're blowing this out of proportion. And I'm trying to keep it calm, keep it right down to what was exactly happening, fully knowing that this guy is most likely reliving some childhood trauma about being told off or told not to do something specifically. And that just threw him off the loop. He did not know how to handle it. And the only way he knew how to handle it was to just go straight in it and start accusing me of telling him, please don't park on my driveway without our consent. Wow. Okay, so that's the gist. I'm not going to dwell any longer on that. Suffice it to say, though, that after that, he's been slumming the gate purposely just to annoy me to this day. And, so there are a few things to take away from all of this. And I think a few things that are dead obvious is I got to hone in on my communication skills. B, people are much more sensitive than you think they might be. And C, I'm definitely attracting some weird things, because that's not the only thing happening to, there are other groups of people who have been really odd. And so I'm going to look at C first, okay? The C part is actually pretty easy to understand. We all have our issues. We all have our problems, and we go through life and we try to work it out, but we all carry a lot of the emotional garbage and even discarded old data that no longer is relevant with our present situation, but we show up with it. We show up everywhere with it. Most of the time, it's like an iceberg, right? You can barely see it, it's okay, but you don't know what lurks under. And this is pretty much what happened. Now, in this case, obviously this guy has serious issues, is pretty antisocial, and has traumatic childhood experiences. Most likely his parents were probably tough with him, and he's from that generation. I get that. Now, I didn't get, in my naive and innocent state of mind, didn't get that a man in his 70s would be a little bit more wise about it, considering that he had handled another even more psychotic person in the neighborhood with brio. It was wonderful the way he did it. But with me, he just lashed out. So I thought that was interesting, and that also meant that, well, I have to be careful how I communicate, especially since I am, quote-unquote, a communicator. But also, I have to be very careful how I come across, but even in ways that I might not even imagine, right? So sending the email for him was too much. I needed to stop what I was doing and cater to his attention and to say, now, that's not good. Please don't do it again. And then he would have given me all of his excuses and everything, which to me were so irrelevant. I didn't have the time. I was on a time crunch, and I needed to get going. The other thing also is that I'm seeing a lot of that happening everywhere in society, and not just our society here in the United States. I mean, I'm seeing it in Europe. I'm sure it happens everywhere in Asia, but people are stressed out. People are stressed out. I, for one, understand it. I'm stressed out. I have never any idea where my next paycheck is going to come from. I never know if I'm going to be able to pay rent. There were plenty of times when, I had to really struggle to pay rent. In fact, ever since the 2008 global crash, we've lost pretty much all of our IRAs while we were bailing out Wall Street, banks, even people who bought homes that shouldn't have ever bought homes, right? Well, what about us here, renters? So I have to be very careful of that, and I know that I'm attracting this, and I need to understand that, because people are stressed out, and that's something you've got to be really, really, really careful when you write. But at the same time, it puts you in a very odd situation, because if you reply and if you start to communicate in a very diplomatic and nice way, then people think you're either stupid, you're a nice person, and they can bully you around and move you around. So you want to come across in a way that, or I want to come across in a way that is straightforward, firm, but at the same time says, hey, no problem here, but. So that's the biggest challenge I'm having lately, and I'm sure many of you are probably having that challenge too, and I would love to hear more about it. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. So the other thing too that it brings to mind is that not only are people stressed out, not only are people not really happy, because this is, unfortunately, our Western society is more geared and aimed at material wealth and position than mental, emotional health. And we see that all the time. For me, a big problem also is now that I am 50 and I'm getting into that part of my life, I'm also realizing that everything around me is geared towards the 20s and 30s, and then less and less and less with the elders out there. And it's a shame because elders play a huge role in society. Unfortunately, what you might not know is that many elders don't feel they are a valued part of society. In other words, they feel abandoned, discarded, and shunned. And that is a really, really horrible thing, because you know what is happening right now? A lot of them commit suicide. And that is absolutely wrong. Now, if you take into consideration the state of our economy, the unemployment factor and everything, well, you know, elders can actually play a huge role. First of all, they could be mentors to the younger generation that so far really does not have a lot of role models or mentorship. I mean, Hollywood, guns and explosions, not really that much. TV, abysmal. So, and of course, the magazines are just about as low eyebrow as they can get. So, elders could really play a big role in this society. And I'm actively involved with the Mankind Project, something we'll talk about a little bit later. So, the lighter side of psychosis is pretty much everywhere and around us. And it permeates our every movements, thoughts, and communication in our lives. In this case, it is absurd, right? I mean, you're telling someone who is, in his 70s not to park on somebody else's property without, hearing if it's okay or not. But the reaction is bizarre and certainly overblown and everything. But my reaction was also, maybe I should have handled it differently, obviously. I just didn't know how to. And to this day, I'm still not sure how I should have done it, short of stopping everything I was doing to cater to this man's problems and inner traumas. Well, I couldn't, and I can't, and I probably will not do it in the future either, because I don't know. So this is really another question that we need to ask ourselves: is what is the right way of communicating with people, or is it better to do what most of us do? Avoid communication, avoid talking to the neighbors, avoid a lot of that transaction, and that which makes us so much richer as a society, as human beings. Yeah, maybe that's part of it. And I'm certainly noticing it more and more around me. One thing I never expected from all of this is the aftermath. I'm like pretty much everybody else. I like to have a good time. I'm a nice person. I like things to be even-keeled. I like having fun. But as far as relationships are concerned, diplomacy reigns. I don't want to rock the boat or anything like that. So one thing I never really fully could imagine is the aftermath. And the aftermath is basically now, well, short of slamming the gate just to annoy me and to spite me, there's no talking to this person anymore. In fact, he'll walk past me and look down, in his little angry face and just walk past me, which is a very odd feeling. And with her, well, I don't know really what's happening. We do say hi, we exchange, a little hello, and that's it kind of thing. Oh, and there was another very strange incident, and that's a really good example of the lighter side of psychosis, is after all of these emails, after all of that stuff, he probably got her to ask my wife if they could still somehow park on the driveway after saying all these things, after doing all these things, which was just... I mean, we were laughing about it. We thought, my God, what the heck is going on here? So, she was very diplomatic. She said, look, I'm traveling. I'm not at home. After what happened, I don't think it is a good thing to think about. And I certainly don't see it happening after all these emails. To which, rightfully so, that wonderful lady replied, yeah, those emails were less than diplomatic. So I guess that's where we are. That's where it stands. But it's really odd because... it really broke down an entire structure of trust and equilibrium, I should say, within this community here, where we relied on them, they relied on us, but also how it progressively got out of control. In the beginning, it was very humbly asking for the parking spot, or very humbly asking to park the car on the driveway, and oh, thank you, please, blah 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 blah. But the second time, it was a little bit more straightforward, and the third time and fourth time and so on and so forth, it became almost a demand. It was almost a well, you owe it to us. And of course, what I never said is that I also said in the email, look, dude, we've had 3 cars on the streets for 10 years, so we know a heck of a lot about moving them around because it's street sweeping. And I know also how to get in touch with people and go and work on their driveway. But when they don't say yes after the second time, I don't insist because, well, that's the way it is, right? Some people don't like to be pushed to say yes or no, and that's totally fine. So that was also, I try to explain it like that, but that did not go through at all. And so, having that text after that just showed us, this is really bizarre, how this started as a casual please to a we'd like to a we're going to. And that's where you kind of have to draw the line and go, well, no, guys. And maybe that's, ultimately I'm a high-end thinker, processor here. I think out loud. But maybe that is the problem. Maybe the problem was that we didn't nip it in the bud from the beginning. We didn't address it correctly from the beginning, the first time, saying, yes, you can park here, but it's a temporary solution. It's not something that can happen all the time. And maybe that was it. Maybe not even maybe, but now I'm pretty sure that was the problem. I wasn't upfront about it. I didn't anticipate how this could get out of control. So now I think I fully understand. And it also leads me to think about the next story that I want to present, which is going to be a little tricky because, again, without naming names and all of this and all of that, this is a story of how I accepted to help these people and make money, of course, with it, but to help these people with an online project. And, the online project was a great idea. This is where I make my money. And in the meantime, I said, well, I can pick up a few hours here with your place here, and so that I understand how everything works. Well, fast forward a month later, I'm only working there. The project is not really going at all in the direction it's going. It's only going to be a shadow of itself, and I'm getting paid nothing to work, and I'm getting paid nothing to do all sorts of things that have nothing to do with my communication skills. So again, that was another problem now that I'm carrying on into my next project is I brought it onto myself. From the beginning, I wasn't firm enough to say, no, I can only do this. This is what I do. And if I wrap it up into my very first episode where I talked about that job I had last year, that was what I thought I had done by explaining very clearly that I am a communicator. I'm a spokesperson. I'm an ambassador. I communicate, verbally, through videos, by writing. This is what I do. I'll do a little bit of sales. That's great. That's fun and all dandy, but it's just not my forte. So I realize now that a year later, this has happened again. And now that I've actually spoken out this whole entire session here, this whole episode, I realize that I just did the same thing with my next door neighbor. So the lighter side of psychosis, and maybe this is where I should emphasize the lighter side, is that, we have problems. Yes, others have problems. But you know what? In the end, say it out loud, straight from the beginning, make people understand. And if they don't understand, that can happen. It will happen. Well, that's the way it is. After that, you know what? You don't need people like that in your life. So that's what I'm walking away from with all of this today. Now, I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear about your lighter side of psychosis stories, what you are experiencing, both at work, at home, with your neighbors, with yourself too, because, we have a relationship with ourselves. And feel free to email me at Nicholas at Car News Cafe. So that's Nicholas, no H, Nicolas at Car News Cafe, CARNEWS Cafe.com. And I will certainly take everything into consideration. And then maybe we can even do an interview that's easy to do and easy to have fun with. Well, in the meantime, I'll leave you with this second episode of The Lighter Side of Psychosis. a Taptosaurus production with your host, Nicholas Zart, and I hope you've had as much fun as I've had.